everybody. Welcome to the show. I am thrilled to have a special guest today. And I'm going to start the show off the way I start every show, which is I like to point out that all we do is elder law, Medicaid planning, estate planning, probate, some life care planning. That doesn't mean we handle everything. We don't handle every aspect that might negatively or positively impact the elderly, which is the mission of this show, is to introduce you to resources around the state so that if you deal with something that is related to what I do, but not what I do, I can give you access to some of the best and brightest out there. And to that end, today we have a phenomenal guest, Richard Casey with the Robinson Casey firm, I should say, out of Boca Raton. They specialize in a really interesting niche, which is the Marchman Act. A lot of people have heard of the Baker Act. I would bet that fewer people have heard of the Marchman Act. No less important, really interesting stuff. Let's get into it. But before we do, Richard, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Richard Casey, and I'm one of the founding partners of the law firm Robinson Casey. And we specialize in helping families with loved ones suffering from addiction and mental illness access treatment. And the tools that we use for that include the Marchman Act.
Very good. So let's get right into it. What is the Marchman Act?
Yeah, the Marchman Act is a specialized statute here in the state of Florida that's unique to the state of Florida, that is available to anyone who is located in Florida, even if they are only coming for a short period. But once they become located in the state of Florida, this act ultimately can go into effect to help a family leverage and get their loved one into treatment. So if someone has a substance use and co-occurring mental health issue, and they're unwilling to voluntarily accept treatment themselves for their substance use disorders, then this law allows either family or a person with personal knowledge to intervene and to bring involved the court processes to help get their loved one into treatment and care inside the state of Florida.
So in short, when we think of Marchman Act, we're thinking of substance abuse. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap into either mental health or gambling or eating disorders from time to time.
Okay.
But there's usually there must be some degree of substance abuse.
Okay. So substance, let's just read just to make sure that we're covering things. Alcoholism, that's a big one.
Yep. Yes.
Drug abuse.
Yes.
That would be illegal drug abuse and maybe even prescription, perfectly legal drug abuse. That sound about right?
Yes. Yep. It has more to do with the misuse, abuse, or dependency on a alcohol, illicit substance, or prescription medication.
Okay. Got it. Okay. And just so we can set some contrast and really get context, a lot of people seem to have heard of the Baker Act. What's the Baker Act? We're not going to focus on that, but how does that differ from the Marchman Act?
Yeah, so the Baker Act is another statute in Florida, and it's something that more states tend to have something really similar to, and they usually think of them as like emergency stabilizations. And there's a longer process to the Baker Act besides the emergency stabilization, but one of the main things that it is, it focuses on people with mental health disorder, not necessarily someone with substance use. And the location that they're beginning to get stabilized, they're going to be brought to what's called a crisis stabilization unit, which is usually a hospital psych ward, although there are standalone facilities in certain regions. And that really is a 72-hour evaluation, and it could be extended for a little bit, but there's no opportunity really for the family to engage with asking the court to continue treatment. It really, once they get into the examination, the 72-hour examination, it kind of shifts over to the psychiatrist who's in charge of that hospital or in charge of your patient's care to determine, do they need more treatment and to how much, and whether or not they'll proceed with getting them care. And then if they do, the landing place, you don't really get a part of determining where that will be. And it's not really easy to access. Those are huge differentiators what the Marchman Act is. That meaning the Marchman Act, the family does get to participate in that longer term treatment planning. They do get to send them to treatment facilities that they have more involvement with determining where they should be. And ultimately they're going to be in a little bit more of a dignified environment. They're going to be a little bit better suited for longer term treatment in a better facility.
Okay. So we have so let's switch over. Thank you very much for that. So that's the Baker Act. Let's get back over to the Marchman Act. Let's focus solely on that. So we have let's walk through a typical case. It's a relative is abusing alcohol in a way where it is significantly negatively impacting their life. At what point in time is a Marchman Act relevant, and let's start with that. When is a Marchman Act relevant? When should we be thinking about invoking the Marchman Act?
Yeah, I think that obviously one of the first things you want to do is obviously talk to your family member, right? You definitely want to encourage them to go get treatment on their own. And some people are very resistant to that conversation, both the family member and the individual suffering, right? They're afraid of the conflict potentially that might happen if they bring up what their substance use is like. But I think it's really important that at least that initial conversation happen. But more often than not, someone who's using the Marchman Act's loved one has already been to treatment at least once before, or they've been in the hospital once before, or they've gotten some type of serious life consequence, right? And so most often than not, it's that there's some type of dysfunctional life event, that they've been to treatment and they've continued to fail. They're refusing to go back. We've had multiple interventions and they continue to refuse, or they're losing their job. They're falling down all around the house. They're ending up in the hospital. They are being diagnosed as cirrhosis, or they're overdosing. They're suffering from a psychiatric break where they end up in what could be like cannabis-induced psychosis. And so some people don't always think of cannabis as being dangerous, but unfortunately for a lot of families, they're seeing the consequences that cannabis can have on their loved one's mental health. And so it varies, but more often than not, it's an individual who's refusing to give up their substance use, that has already had an opportunity to get treatment for themselves and vehemently opposed, and there's some negative life consequence.
Okay. All right. So now we've recognized that the Marchman Act is appropriate. Can you walk me through what the process looks like? So what does a family member do? They call your office. You've recognized that this is a case worth taking. Where do you go from there? What can the family expect? What's the experience like?
Yeah, I mean, this is an extremely stressful time in anyone's life. It doesn't matter whether you're using the Marchman Act or not. If you're in a situation where your loved one is constantly using and are abusing substances, and you're looking at trying to get them into treatment, and you're not sure if they're willing to go, and you've probably had the conversation at least once, and they're not going to go, usually there's a lot of emotional angst, a lot of concern, right? What I would say is that too many families wait too long. They call us when their crisis is at the doorstep. Whereas they could have called us a week before, right? And the situation would have been very similar. But they would have had more time to deal with the problem before the crisis escalated. And so,
and I want to point out real quickly that it's fairly understandable, like especially in my world, I deal with a primarily, not exclusively, but a primarily an elderly population. And sometimes, when it's mom or dad who's abusing the substance and now it's in the hands of the child to do something about it, that can be an intimidating position to be in. And not only that, because of that lifelong power dynamic, the parent might go, don't tell me what to do. I'm still the father. I'm still the mother. Don't tell me what to do. And so it really puts the child in I want to recognize this is an incredibly uncomfortable, stressful position that they can find themselves in.
Absolutely. And then sometimes you get the parents who are older in life and they're not the one with the problem, but they have two kids and one of them has a kid. And then the sibling is getting put in the situation of, I'm supposed to solve the problem, like, I'm in recovery myself, and my dad, before I was in recovery, my dad needed to go to treatment, and my grandparents didn't really want to be the ones that had to solve the problem. They wanted my mom to step up to the plate. Right? They want, and that makes a lot of sense, right? But sometimes there's not that type of family system in place, and it might be only a sibling, and then that sibling doesn't know what to do, and they're trying to work with the family, with the parents, right? But calling earlier is definitely always a benefit, because this at least gives you the opportunity to have more choices, but it also allows you to act when things are in a more manageable posture, right? And you might be able to get a better result. But from the Marchman Act standpoint, even in crisis, that is what it's there for, right? Emergencies need action, and the Marchman Act can be enacted on an emergency basis. So most of the time, what the process looks like is the emergency has already arisen, and we get the phone call. And what happens in that is we have someone who's going to answer the phone, and they're going to immediately start taking down, we have a person who's dedicated to doing like immediate intake. And we want to get you immediately on the phone with someone who can gather that base level information, that can get kind of what's going on, who's it going on with, where are you located, what are you looking for us to be able to help you with? Is it the Marchman Act, right? Is this substance use disorder? Let's get this top layer right away. Great. Now let's schedule you with a consultation, same day, next day, right? We want to talk with you, someone to have a dedicated consultation to talk about what the Marchman Act is and give you that experience. Gather more detailed facts, get into the details, and what we'll learn in our firm is that we want to take action from the moment that you sign and hire us, right? From when you fully retained our firm, within 12 to 24 hours. Like, our commitment is to get something filed in court for the Marchman Act, so that the court can initiate this emergency order within 12 to 24 hours of that moment that you retain our firm. So we're hoping to get you in that process pretty quickly.
I would imagine, and it's because they're in a moment of crisis.
Yeah, we don't want to have this delayed system, and so sometimes it's taking action quickly. That really makes the difference.
Okay, so they've hired you. You file something with the court. What happens then?
Yeah, so the court has the opportunity to review the petition for two different things. First, they are going to schedule a hearing for our request that this individual receive treatment for up to 90 days. And so this is the big differentiator, the length of time, right? We're asking not for an emergency 72-hour evaluation. We're asking for treatment. Yes, we're asking for treatment for up to 90 days, right? And so they're going to schedule a hearing for that, because there's no ultimate determination until we have a hearing on whether or not we can have treatment for up to 90 days. But that doesn't solve two things. That doesn't solve whether or not that person needs to be brought somewhere immediately, right, for safety reasons. And it doesn't involve, has an expert, right, has someone who's trained clinically in evaluating people for substance use disorders examined them yet. And so we don't want to have a hearing without those two things. We don't want to have a hearing until we want to make sure that the court has had the chance to both evaluate whether or not there's an emergency and your loved one should be in care right away. And we also want to make sure that when we go to that hearing that we have an assessment that's been completed by an expert. And so there's a second piece of this request, asking for an emergency assessment. And so when we file that paperwork, the court's going to schedule the hearing, but they're also going to determine, should an emergency evaluation be made? And if an emergency evaluation should be made, they will issue an order authorizing law enforcement to bring your loved one to a detoxification and assessment facility. on an emergency basis. And then that facility will perform the assessment necessary and be prepared to bring that to court on the day of the hearing.
Okay. So is the individual who has a substance abuse problem, I would imagine many times they're not voluntarily coming. So the police are coming, they're forcibly removing someone and bringing them to a treatment center until the hearing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so there's a couple of nuances that are actually really beneficial.
Yeah.
So sometimes someone can already be in a detox or treatment facility and be threatening to leave, and you can get this emergency order that causes them to be able to remain.
Great.
Now that depends on the county and the jurisdiction, and every county does it differently.
Right.
But there are the authority for them to essentially order an assessment even when someone's already in treatment, so then law enforcement wouldn't necessarily need to do the transport.
Okay.
And when the law enforcement does need to do the transport, they're usually crisis intervention trained officers. In other words, officers, they're not necessarily showing up with the idea of we're going to forcibly remove you, but they're trained to basically say, this is a court order, and what we need to do is take you safely and bring you to detox. You have to come with us, and still even sometimes allow them to get a bag together, right?
Right. Okay.
And so, they're going to walk them through that process and bring them to treatment. Not everyone's going to have the time or resources to be able to put a bag together from an officer standpoint.
Sure.
But they're usually officers that are dedicated to doing this particular type of work.
Interesting. And is the individual appointed their own attorney or given an opportunity to gain representation?
Yes. So the individual, and this is one of the main reasons why it's important, even though the Marchman Act can be done without an attorney by the family, one of the main reasons it's important that we believe for the families to hire an attorney is that your loved one has the right to an attorney.
Right.
Or they have the opportunity to hire their own attorney if they can't afford their own attorney.
Right.
And so they're going to be in the position of being able to be represented. If they don't have the resources, one can be appointed to them.
Sure.
And so they're going to be defended by legal counsel. And it can be really hard for a family that's going through crisis, that's dealing with so much, to go down to the courthouse, to go through this on their own, and not have anyone advocating for them that knows what's important.
I can't imagine it. Yeah, not wanting to do this yourself. It does not feel like a DIY project for sure.
It's scary. Yeah. And ultimately, even having legal counsel, one of the benefits is that it goes a lot smoother because the other attorney knows that the case is prepared the right way.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, very good. So they get an attorney one way or the other, whether they're hiring one or one's being appointed for them. And then the hearing is is there a set time frame from the time the treatment has been either forced upon or voluntarily?
So when we first file the petition, the first hearing is supposed to be within 10 days.
Okay.
And so obviously we're looking to also get the order requiring the emergency assessment, and in most counties, right, we're very successful in getting that achieved.
Okay.
There are situations where someone is in treatment, let's say, right, and the court says, I'm not going to mandate that they stay until the hearing. Let's come and discuss whether the assessment's necessary.
Right.
But that's very rare. It does happen from time to time.
Okay.
So it could be a little bit longer until we get the order that says it must be 90 days. But generally speaking, within 10 days, we're going to be at a hearing with an assessment from the facility. Your loved one's going to be consistently in care from the moment, the law enforcement either serves them at the facility or brings them to the facility until the hearing date. And so you're going to have this continuity of treatment. And one of the best parts is that if working with us, we understand each of the counties, we can create a strategy to bring you to some of the best treatment facilities in the country. And so we're ultimately able to access private treatment facilities that are not just state hospitals or publicly funded programs. We're able to get you to
get them the best care possible.
The best 100%. Care possible.
Yeah, that's great. That's really fantastic. Okay, so this makes a ton of sense. And also, I would imagine hiring an attorney to initiate and be your eyes and ears during this process is also a form of self-protection. I would imagine a lot of people are going to be accused without a lawyer of doing this as a way to punish a family member or kind of abusing the system. And if you can work with a professional like yourself, then you kind of get to distance yourself from that because you're not going to take a nonsense case.
No,
That
we're
makes
not going to
sense?
take a
Yeah.
nonsense case.
Yeah.
And I think that people's fears aren't usually in the litigation space.
Yeah.
I mean, that's less common. They're really worried about their relationship with their loved one, right? Totally. And their loved one's going to lob all kinds of allegations against them. And so, yes, having that attorney be the barrier, right, can help insulate them. Even just being firm with your loved one that they have to go to treatment and holding a boundary can be really hard.
Yeah.
Right? We don't always have the skill sets to kind of create consequences for our loved ones, whether they be financial leverage or emotional leverage, and that may not be how we want to operate. And so one of the things the Marchman Act actually does help with is that it kind of puts the court in the position of saying, this isn't mom and dad, this isn't your sister and brother, this isn't your spouse, this isn't your adult children that are doing this anymore. That there's now been proof that this is something you need for your own health. And so we as the court are going to make sure that you get the care you need. So don't blame your family.
And so you bring up a great point, which is, that's the big fear is, I'm sure some very hurtful things are going to be spewed from the person being forced into a recovery program. What's your experience as to what's the long-term consequences? Is this better for the family dynamic, or is this kind of sever the family dynamic?
So I have had some of the coolest experiences with this. It doesn't matter if you use the Marchman Act or you get your loved one to treatment. The person who's abusing substances, the addict, right, the alcoholic, whatever that situation may be, the person suffering from mental illness who's suffering from like the exacerbation of their disorder from the abuse of substances, whatever the scenario being, they're designed in those moments of abuse to deny the condition, to manipulate the situation, to use mean and targeted manipulative tactics to make you feel bad about going about saving their life, because they don't want to give up their quote unquote solution of alcohol or drugs, right? And that self-medication or that addiction is so powerful that they'll throw every difficult scenario your way, regardless of the Marchman Act, right? If you try to coerce them into treatment. And so, one of the coolest things is that once someone's mind clears, they're successful getting in recovery. These things fall by the wayside, right? Like, if we're successful in getting someone to recovery, they're going to appreciate it. We've met so many people that have said, I've been Marchman Acted and it was the best thing my family ever did for me. Because
that person who's initially hurling all the insults, that's not your family member. That's not your friend. That's somebody else.
That's the addict. That's somebody else. That's the person that they've become. That's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
That's right.
And when they take the substance, they're no longer the same person that you want them to be. And if you want to go back to the time where you have the person that you loved, that person that you remember spending time with and enjoyed those types of family activities with, they're gonna need to address their substance use disorder. And if they're not willing to do that on your own, whether you use the Marchman Act or you use a different intervention type tool, they're probably only going if you coerce them. Like, most people don't want to go to treatment when they go to treatment. Their family intervenes. This is just one way.
It's a display of love. It's a display of love. That's really what it is.
It is.
Very good. Richard, Fantastic. Let me ask you, the firm Robinson Casey, I know you're based out of Boca Raton. Do you serve outside of Boca?
So we work with the entire state of Florida,
Very
right?
good.
There are not enough attorneys that specialize in the Marchman Act
For sure.
and helping families that are in this situation.
Yep.
And so we found that in other areas of Florida, the law exists and these families don't have access to representation, that people
Yep.
aren't there to represent them. And this is all over the state of Florida. And so
Yep.
we've committed to making ourselves available. Fortunately, through the advent of Zoom, that can be a little bit more
Yep.
manageable.
Yep.
And we've committed to doing that at all the counties. It's different in every county, and
Yep.
so the processes, each county does make it entirely different, which means that
Hmm.
we have different ways of navigating each county. But we
Yep.
have represented families all the way from the Panhandle across to Duval, down
Yep.
to Miami, over to
Yep.
Tampa, right? We've done Orlando, Palm Beach, we've done Naples, right? We've done it's not really a four corners state, but we've done the four corners and in between
Yes.
of what Florida is.
And if someone wanted to reach out to you directly, what's the best way for them to do that?
They should reach out to our firm. They should just call our firm. They should to get a time to speak to us. You can also visit our website, www.robinsoncasey.com, but you can reach out at 561-203-0085, and that will bring you directly to a member of our team. And if you need help, we'll be able to walk you through the process.
What's that number one more time?
It's 561-203-0085.
And we're going to put that on display in our show notes as well. Richard, this has been very informative. I think a phenomenal overview of the process. Thank you very much for sharing your intelligence with us and being one of our trusted resources throughout the state. If you need a Marchman Act attorney, Richard Casey with Robinson Casey is the place to go. And I thank you again so much for your time and knowledge.
Thank you so much, Jason. Everything that you do for families is amazing. So we really appreciate the hard work that you guys put in to make sure that families are getting the types of care and resources that they need.
Yeah, I thought that Medicaid planning was niche. Not a lot of attorneys doing that. Even fewer doing Marchman Act. So, my kudos to you. All right, Richard. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.